kiss me, say you miss.
There's a real excitement, a real buzz about
Kiss me,
it.
love, with heavenly affection. Hold me close to you.
It's erotic.
See me through with all your heart's protection.
Rodin's The Kiss is probably the most recognisable of all modern sculptures. His thinker would be the only rival. The huge erotic work chiselled from a single piece of cream marble is a milestone in the history of art. It's surprising then that 100 years ago The Kiss was commissioned for the quiet East Sussex county town of Lewes, where it arrived in 1904.
Once again, make my dreams come true.
Sadly, the marble masterpiece had a cool reception from the prosperous and somewhat conservative burghers of Lewes. It was vilified as a corrupting influence on youth, covered by a tarpaulin, relegated to a stable block, and eventually sold. Only in 1953 was it acquired by the Tate Gallery, where it immediately became a major attraction. Now, at the end of the century, the Kiss is returning to Lewes in triumph, to preside in state over the very town hall from which it was bundled unceremoniously 80 years earlier. For many years, the visit to Lewes by this controversial masterpiece had been all but forgotten. The Rodin connection was so improbable that it was becoming as if it had never happened. But it did. Interest was rekindled when a local journalist, John May, got wind of the story and became intrigued. And this week, The Peer tells that story.
I simply heard a rumour that the Kiss had been in Lewes. This seemed very unlikely given that it's one of the most famous statues in the world. And I could not get this out of my mind, and I'd walk past Lewes House every day and I'd look at it and think about it. But I just had a feeling, as a professional journalist, that there was a great deal more to this story. I was fortunate to meet a secretary to the then chairman of the district council, who owned Lewes House. And he took me to his little office in the stable block, and he sat there and he started pulling out the most amazing things from this box, all these photos of Rodin and these letters and documents and all kinds of other amazing stuff. But what really did it was when he handed me Rodin's visiting card with a message in his own hand, at which point the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. It was as if I'd made real contact with Rodin himself, and it confirmed that this was a really important and interesting story.
Curiosity became an ambitious plan to bring the Kiss back to Lewes, and a team was formed to try and achieve it.
It just makes me laugh hysterically when I think about us all sitting in the garden talking about the whole project and persuading each other to get involved with it, and saying, but it's only going to take a day a week. Yeah, right, it's taken up our lives.
Eventually, a company was set up working alongside the local authority. But would the Tate ever part with its Kiss?
In principle, the Tate Gallery only lends to other public museums and galleries. So the very idea of bringing a great work of sculpture like this into a town hall is quite outside the usual procedures and indeed policies. But, of course, what was so compelling was the whole narrative of bringing a work back to its origins, in a sense, to where it started. Simply what we did was to say, OK, if you want this to be possible, these are the things you've got to do. And it's all credit to Lewes that they then went and did it.
Lewes went to work with a will, refurbishing much of the town hall, finding an experienced exhibition curator, and borrowing other artworks to put the Kiss in context. But the clincher for the Tate was the tale of how the Kiss came to be in Lewes in the first place.
The story began with a guy called Edward Perry Warren, who was a gay Bostonian who left his native city and went to Oxford to study the classics, and whilst there met a man called John Marshall, who he formed a lifelong friendship with. They were obsessed by Greek culture, particularly homoerotic Greek culture, and they felt the best way of educating people about the Greek perspective in life was through Greek objects themselves. And they resolved to establish a very substantial collecting operation. And during that period, they dominated the trade in classical antiquities in Europe. Obviously, they needed a base from which to run such an operation, Warren having inherited quite a large amount of money on his father's death. And eventually they found Lewes and bought a grand house in the High Street, Lewes House, where they set up a strange medieval court with a kind of Greek-style brotherhood of a wide variety of aesthetes and artists who were assisting them in their collecting business. As a result of all these activities, they met a number of artists, including a guy called William Rothenstein, and Rothenstein was also a great friend of Rodin's. And in 1898, Rodin exhibited at the Paris Salon the first larger-than-life marble version of the Kiss. Rothenstein thought the statue would appeal to Warren. He talked about its pagan sexuality. And he also knew that Rodin was short of money, and he managed to engineer a contract and a deal between them. And in 1900, Warren paid Rodin to produce a new version of the Kiss.
At this time, at the birth of the new century, Rodin was at the height of his fame, perhaps the best-known artist in the world, renowned not just for his sculpture, but also for his sexual conquests. Works like The Thinker and The Burghers of Calais attracted collectors from all over Europe and America, and were seen as the last great works in the tradition of the Greeks and the Renaissance. One of his most controversial pieces was The Gates of Hell, based on Dante's Inferno, for which the composition of the Kiss was originally intended.
Bien sûr, on évoque à propos de Rodin ses grandes affaires.
One always thinks of Rodin with regards to his love life, the love he had for Camille Claudel especially, but this was secondary. What fundamentally mattered most to him was his sculpture.
Bon, je crois qu'il aimait beaucoup les femmes.
I think he loved many women.
Alors, le baiser a été conçu pour être placé.
The kiss was designed to fit here in the centre of the left-hand panel of the door. It represented Paolo and Francesca, two characters who met in hell. But Rodin decided to represent them at the moment when they exchanged a kiss and discovered their love. But he came to the conclusion that this picture of a loving couple no longer fitted into the tragic tones of the Gates of Hell. So he made it into an independent piece of work, which was exhibited and which has the success that we are all familiar with.
A sculptor working in Paris at present and very much in Rodin's tradition is Crispin Guest, an Englishman who still works in the manner of the master.
In his own time, he was controversial. Now he's popular, I think, because he's someone that the public in general can relate to. The truth is still there, the fact that there is tragedy, there's vulnerability, there's pain, there's love, the kiss. If an artist is looking for something beneath the surface, something of strength and so on, he'd find Rodin's shadow hovering behind his shoulder. The other thing is, as far as the public is concerned, all you have to do is go to the Rodin Museum any time of the week, and there are people there, lots of them. They love Rodin.
The actual production of the statue took 4 years. In 1903, Rodin himself actually came to Lewes House with William Rothenstein to have dinner with Warren and friends. This was because Rodin himself was a great collector of antiquities, and he was very keen to see Warren's collection. This was a very private world unto itself. Warren was known as the mad millionaire, and apart from the people who worked here or did the garden or looked after the horses, very few local people would have gained access to the house. So I would imagine he arrived here fairly anonymously, had supper or dinner, possibly stayed overnight, and left without most people in Lewes being aware of his presence at all. And it was another year before the Kiss itself was ready to come to Lewes. Unfortunately, Warren miscalculated both the weight and the size of the statue, because it seems virtually impossible that the statue actually went into Lewes House. The doors are too small and the weight is too much for either the front or the back hall. Instead of taking pride of place in his collection, it was actually installed in the stable block of the house,
where it was to spend most of the next 30 years, apart from one scandalous interlude when Warren offered it on loan to the town council. By the time it was installed in the town hall, war had broken out, and the KISS shared its new home with hundreds of young soldiers en route to France.
The proximity of large numbers of young men and a 3.5-ton, 7-foot white marble statue of erotic love was not a happy mixture in terms of the mores of the time. We know, for instance, just from another point of view to do with the care of the statue, there were boxing matches staged in the room on a regular basis, and we have one reliable anecdotal account that people were pressed so tightly around the statue that they were clambering up on top of it to get a better view of the fight. This is when the Lewes scandal emerges. It seems now that there was a group of local Puritans, and we believe that one of the prime people of this group was a woman called Miss Fowler Tutt. She was a very severe figure, wore large black hats with crow's feathers in them. And she, at this time, was headmistress of a local school and very concerned about particularly the young women in her care. First of all, they commissioned a guardrail which was placed around the statue to prevent anybody clambering up on it. And then they went for the ultimate solution.
As the KISS disappeared beneath the tarpaulin, the council asked Warren to remove it from the town hall. So it was back to the stables, and the KISS hit the bottom of its fortunes. Rodin was dead and his reputation had declined considerably. Then in 1928 Warren died and his possessions went to auction. The KISS failed even to reach its reserve price of £5,000. In Lewes, it was all systems go, winding up the town for its moment in the cultural spotlight. To be fair, its second moment, but this time the event was anticipated with rather more enthusiasm. The KISS was coming home. One problem was the weight of the eager lovers, something around 3.5 tons. Place this masterpiece on the average wooden floor and it's likely to drop straight through it. Paul Miles had the task of making sure everything remained above board.
The first problem that we had to deal with was one of physical fit. And job number one was to measure the crate, to see if it would go through the doorways, which it does, but only with 20 millimetres clearance, which is very, very tight. So then the other problem was one of delivery, because it was impractical to lift the whole floor up and stolage all the way through, so we needed an overfloor solution to sustain the weight of the KISS on the way there, which is a steel plate solution. It's 8 millimetre steel plate. You can hear that that's quite a chunky bit of steel. There's 3 tons altogether, actually. All seems to be 3 tons, this job. We did a trial run with this trolley loaded with 3.5 tons of cement bags, which we wrapped in cellophane. We then ran to see if it fitted through the door. We did expect some creaking of timbers, but we never got that, so this worked very well indeed.
Thrill, thrill me with your charms, take me in your arms and make my life perfection. Kiss, kiss me, darling, then.
On the streets, Rodin mania was inescapable. There were the respectable tributes in half the shop windows in the high street, prints on sale, bunting and banners, and then there were the less conventional tributes, like that of the Snowdrop pub, suggesting that Rodin's sculptures could be made perfect with the addition of a pint of beer. And then there was the other version.
It's my versions of Rodin's The KISS statue, which I made out of paper mache. It took about 3 or 4 days to make, probably spread over about a 4-week period. But you can only do a bit at a time because you have to let the coats dry.
Meanwhile, Rodin's version was safely back in the town hall. And with the KISS unboxed, the team allowed themselves a brief photo opportunity.
Fascinating piece of work, I think. And I think it'll draw a tremendous amount of tourists and that to the town.
Lewes is a place to be reckoned with. Everybody would appreciate seeing it, though. Just it's fantastic. It really is. It's lovely.
Quite impressive, you know. It's, you actually see something in the flesh, as they say.
It looks as though the whole town hall was built for the purpose of holding that sculpture, and I certainly don't think we ought to give it back to the Tate.
Let's take it. Artist Julian Bell completing the backdrop to the play of the statue, also called The Kiss.
Good day, Miss Mayor.
Miss Fowler-Tutt.
The cancer of moral decay in this town is far more widespread than anyone imagines, with a dimension of revolutionary zeal that ensures a voracious malignancy.
There was also a BBC radio play and widespread coverage in the national papers. But The Kiss, while central, is not the entire exhibition. A number of other Rodin pieces have been borrowed from the Victoria and Albert Museum and the Museé Rodin. The supporting casts, small bronzes and marble sculptures, all have their place relating to the kiss itself. Except poor Paolo and Francesca, who can't seem to find a pedestal anywhere. As the last sculpture found its place, it was time to invite the great and the good to inspect the kiss.
All the local Sussex bigwigs, of which there are probably hundreds. Well, 390, I think, aren't there? 390. Tonight, yeah.
Hello. Nice to see you. My wife Isabel. I think the Tate Gallery's been very good, the way they've loaned it to us, as they should do, of course. And I hope that a lot of people will come and enjoy it.
I think it's fulfilled all of the hopes that we had. It will be good for the town. It will be good for everyone associated with the town.
I think it's fantastic. It shouldn't have been taken away from Lewes in the first place. I think it's a very elegant piece of work.
It's not exactly rude, it's just what he thought he might want to make. I think that's good.
I think he's an extraordinary modern master. He's that one individual who took those methods of making and ideas which were inherently part of 19th century sculpture and did extraordinary things.
I saw it before, about 20 years ago at the Tate, and I won't forget it because of all the things I saw that day. I remember it was so stunning and surprising and moving. I remember being able to walk all the way around it. You have to walk around this sculpture because of the movement that's in it, and every little corner is so delicious. In this room, it's perfect. It's a fantastic, huge hall, very light, wonderful space, and it deserves to take centre stage.
The wonderful contradiction of having been locked away all those years and shut up and sort of covered in a blanket because it was embarrassing people. And then finally for it to be welcomed back here with such open arms is, I think, a wonderful thing.
It does look rather natural. I mean, it's as if it sort of was expected to be here, and that, of course, is very surprising given how much controversy it caused when it was last here. And one sort of has to think rather hard to think of it draped, covered up, causing offence. I mean, it really does look, to me, very natural indeed.
But there was still at least one voice raised against the kiss.
In this statue is an embrace of a man and woman who is not married, and therefore it is an act of sin portrayed in this statue in the sight of the Word of God.
Would it be much better if they were married?
Married with clothes on, yeah.
It's shocking because the sculpture itself is so incredibly fluid and so powerful, and the limbs are big and the muscles are there and the passion's there. So in that sense it's shocking because it makes you just take a breath. But it's not shocking in the sense that it's something you wouldn't want to see.
Thrill me with your charms, take me in your arms.
It's passionate, and in a sense it remains rather naughty. Even though we live now in a liberal age, I think it still is rather naughty in its own way. These people don't have any clothes on, and they're having a hell of a kiss.
Kiss me once again, make my dream.
I think a good place for it would be the bottom of the Irish Sea.
I feel a job well done.
You can visit the Rodin exhibition at Lewes Town Hall until October.